Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode, and I've got another fantastic guest for you today, Rula, coming from the Netherlands, and she's going to actually talk to us about broad, overarching themes for today. She's going to talk to us about one is resilience, and she's going to talk to us about connection, breaking free from perfectionism. I'm really excited to have her share personal stories and the power of sharing stories and the role of resilience. And really happy to have her on the show. So, Rula, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I love talking with guests, hearing their origin stories. Briefly talk about your journey, and we'll dive right into the conversation.
My journey, I always thought that my journey was not that interesting, but I knew that there is something there to tell. I never thought I will be living in the Netherlands. I actually didn't think that I will live to see myself turning 30
Hmm.
because I grew up in the war and I spent my childhood, teenage years, and my young adulthood in the war,
Uh-huh.
living a day in, day out. And what's really remarkable is that I have not missed one day of school, regardless of how tough and difficult our life was in the war. And this fascinates me. Think of it since I live in the Netherlands, because having lived the war, not missed a day of school, it opened so much opportunities for me when I moved in to live in Europe. It was a dream, but never something I thought it will ever happen to me. And then I came to the Netherlands to live my life here, build my life here. And I felt so blessed that despite the tough upbringing and the world that I lived, the harsh world I lived in, I still learned and able to build a future in Europe among those who have had really fortunate life and feel like, yeah, I can go with their flow and join them in the futures.
That's a very fascinating story because, like, you and me were talking backstage, and I decided this year to diversify geographically, just given what's the divisiveness here in the states, and it's very interesting because Europe and Latin America, and I always grew up in the states, but never felt like I fit in or belong. So it's really interesting to hear, talk about this idea of duality of identity, and how do you navigate the tension between assimilation and holding onto your cultural roots? Because this is something I suffer from too. Because I don't feel like I'm culturally American, but I don't feel like I'm American. And when I hang out with my Asian counterparts, I don't feel like I'm Asian either. So how do you navigate this?
Yes, that's an excellent question because we all have this moment where we wonder who we are. And we don't have to be from different cultures. It comes up to us earlier when we are from different cultures. Living in the Middle East and moving to the Netherlands, the difference of culture, because the country I come from is a modern country in the Middle East, so it wasn't a big of a cultural shock. Lebanon, I grew up in Beirut, vibrant city, modern city. So the culture was more in the people and the society. I was raised to be polite. I was raised to respect the older people and no, even if they're wrong, I'm not saying this, we're not judging here. I'm not saying this is true or wrong, but my upbringing have brought me to here thinking that I will come to Europe and encounter the freedom, see people who are free and living their lives without boundaries. This is the idea I got from watching Western movies, Western world movies, not the Western movies, even though these are also good. American movies. I have a lot of French background in my culture because Lebanon was a French colony. I went to French schools. So I imagined I will come to Europe and the culture will be very different. And then I discovered that it's not very different. The difference is that where I grew up, we talk about our feelings. We talk about what's happening in our lives. Like I remember my mom's therapist were her friend neighbors having a cup of coffee every morning and dealing with the life issues they have, the work, whatever is going on in their lives.
Mm.
And that was different. this maybe pushed me to make my own podcast about talking and chatting. So Europe, for me, had everything I was dreaming of without the strong emotions and the openness. I
Uh-huh.
noticed in the culture in Europe, people are open and honest and they tell you what they think, but this is not true. They keep a lot to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And building my life here, I needed to hear others people's experiences. So I know, so I learn and get on this boat of the life that I'm living here. And that was the cultural. Now, the identity point, that's a difficult one. I think that only recently, in my 50s, I started understanding what my identity is. But I don't get attached to it because there is so many interesting things in the world, in people, so much to learn that why would I need my identity to be for me? I can be so many things, just be a person in this world. And this comes, of course, from my background, from living in a community, living in a war, having to belong somewhere to survive. If you
Mm-hmm.
don't belong to a specific army, party, you have to belong somewhere to survive. So it did not create my identity. On the contrary, it made me want to embrace so many things around me so that I become the person looking for the freedom that I'm creating.
Very powerful. Just what it brought to my attention was because in the 70s, my parents immigrated from Asia to the United States in search of better opportunity. And then you and me were talking. I've always felt uprooted. I felt the United States is in decline, and a lot of the cities are suffering. And just I feel like I'm being uprooted to either Europe or other. So, how do you this role of resilience? You face significant challenge coming. I've never faced war, but from new country, and then you're raising children, and then you also have this cultural influence from the past. How do you reconcile resilience?
I felt unsafe in a safe world
Mhm.
because I didn't know what safety is. I didn't know what it means to open the tap, have clean water, you have electricity all the time. People are on the street, like traveling by car, going from country to another, enjoying themselves. I grew up in restrictions. We had so little. We even have to stand in line and pretend my family and I, we don't know each other to have enough bread because of the scarcity of the product. And here, in a way, I had to build my safety
Mm.
and discovered that if I have survived Lebanon's war, how come I cannot survive this? It was difficult because when you have such an experience, having conversation with others is also difficult. I wanted to be curious about them, but I felt that I know so many things they don't know. And I don't mean about, oh, I know some, no, about life, hardship. And this made me want to become like them. That was my resilience. I wanted to become successful and build a future and put the past behind me. And I can only do this if I just step on this trauma that I grew up in and build a new life. This was my resilience, that if I was able to go on, if I'm here in Europe now, come on, what's there is nothing I cannot do.
Yeah,
This mindset brought me into, yeah, succeeding in my life.
interesting. Yeah, it's how do you let go of your past trauma? Just how do you continue? Because I know a lot of people they're stuck in their past. Somebody did this to them, or this happened, or how do you let go of that and break free and thrive?
For a very long time, I didn't talk about my past because I was ashamed of it.
Mm.
Growing up in the war, people won't understand. They won't understand that despite that I was growing up in the war, I went to schools and I got an education and we had a good life in a way. Because my brain, my memories somehow suppressed the bad stuff and kept the good stuff. And There were moments every time there's a war breaking around us in Europe or in the Middle East, I find myself not sleeping well, feeling anxious. What if it gets closer? Unfortunately, it is closer. And I found myself sometimes thinking, I have to do my research. I have to find the safest country to go and live there. Imagine that was like my goal. I must go somewhere safe where even if war happened, no one will, like, they're going to be the peaceful side, don't take part of anything. That's an illusion, of course.
Yeah.
I couldn't find this place. I thought, okay, I'm going to build my life here. And when I started my podcast, I started telling my stories in times of war, the good
Yeah.
ones, the happy ones, the good memories of my parents. And then my healing process started. In each episode I created talking about my life in the war, it was a healing process for me. And now I'm not ashamed of it. I talk about it and I feel I'm fortunate so much. So it took very long time, imagine, searching for a peaceful place. But actually the peace came from within me when I started writing these stories.
Ah, interesting. Yeah, we could talk about the power of sharing personal stories and how do you in this idea because you touched upon it, empathy and acceptance, and how do you perceive the power of accepting others for who they are or aspire to be, and how does this relate to the concept of privilege in your view?
Yes, you're making me think of so many topics around us. Look,
Uh-huh.
privilege, that is something that we cannot create. Times I feel like depends where we are born, we have a privilege.
Yeah.
We grab opportunities to become something, to achieve our goals and grow in our life. But it's hard when you are not born in a place with privilege. And I come from a place with no privilege.
Uh,
To move to the Netherlands, and first I started looking around me. I was 25 years old, 24 years old, and hearing people, they're backpacking in Europe and they're spending time in Australia. They went to do the Route 66 in the US. And I was like, started understanding what privilege is. Because for me, to go to Europe for 1 week, I had to show that I own a house, that I have a job,
uh,
provide my bank account, have
uh,
a letter from my boss that I will return to work. It was a whole process just to go for 1 week vacation. This,
yeah.
ironically, now that I live here, my parents to visit me have to go through this whole process.
Mm,
And I look at my daughters and my son. I have 3 kids. They are privileged. They don't know what hardship is. They understand it because they know my stories, where my family comes from. But then I tell them, you have all the opportunities in the world and make
mhm.
good use of it. That's why accept everyone, because what you have is someone else's dream, no matter how small it is.
Yeah.
So I teach them acceptance. And acceptance for me is be whomever you want to be. Why would I? It's actually none of my business who you are and what you do, as long as we have good communication, like no one is hurting the other.
Mhm.
Why would I care? And this is where my acceptance comes. Because when you also grow up in a place where people are fighting each other, brothers in the same house are like holding guns towards each other, you start thinking, is this stupidity or what? How
Yeah.
can this be so bad? So yeah, be whomever you want to be. Who cares?
Yeah. I have two follow-up questions because what's interesting is, a lot in the hearing this, I'm just curious for outsiders' perspective, and a lot of people in the States do enjoy a lot of privilege, have the reserve currency status for now, and we didn't have to go through a lot of the customs. So what is the outsider perspective? Because a lot of Americans they're very unhappy with the way the country is being run, the national debt, and actually people are fleeing to Amsterdam and fleeing to Europe and being like this digital nomads. And they're building a life outside of the States. What is your
Mm.
view on this? Is it a problem with capitalism? Is it? I'm just really I just want to know more.
I like this question. And I hope you want to hear my answer.
Yeah, no, that's what I want. It's a pod. I just
Look,
want to hear
it's
outside of.
wanting to leave Lebanon, I was seeking also capitalism. I
Yeah.
didn't want to go to a country who's not doing well economically. I wanted to go to a rich country. So in a way, I'm also capitalist. I have a beautiful house. I drive a nice car. The issue with us today is that we are following specific people that are successful in life who are sociopath probably,
Oh,
but because they are so successful, they became the role model. And we really, if we look, we're going through two flow. We have the flow of those following the rich and famous, and those are doing great.
uh,
And the other flow was advocating that we have to be kinder to each other. We have to work together and have more value for our life that is not financial. And
uh,
we're struggling with this because life is getting more and more expensive. And at the same time, we want to keep our values and be kind and be nice. And in a way, I hate to say it, but it's reality. Power corrupt. And if you don't have power, you don't want to play with people in power, then you prefer to leave because our voices is not as strong as the powerful voices.
uh,
And despite that I live far from the USA, we're all affected by whatever is happening. It's affecting us all. We're all every day waiting to see how the American people are feeling this morning because it affects our mood in Europe because we
uh,
depend on it.
yeah, yeah,
Europe grew
yeah,
financially and economically, but our manpower is small.
yeah,
And we have forgotten that.
yeah, yeah. It's quite
I hope this
interesting.
answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It's interesting because it's here in the States. We always listen to what Jerome Powell says because he sets the interest rate, and I think he's more powerful than the president because he sets the monetary price of money. And then recently, now the kind of like the market is focused on one company, Nvidia's earnings, and that kind of sets the pace. And it's interesting because in Europe, I would watch these podcasts or interview from like Robert F. Kennedy or Trump or Biden and just say it was interesting that like the onlookers they would see and they'd be like you can actually feel this an American is actually feeling the system collapsing. It was really interesting to say the least. The other question I have for you is I grew up here, I'm Gen X, and I grew up with the dot-com bubble, 9/11, Enron, 2008, and COVID. And I'm just curious from an outsider perspective, how that I know like war and losing your home and family, those are huge things. Are these types of events insignificant compared to having to flee a country? Or I just put things into
Mhm.
perspective for the audience.
I love this question. This is very excellent one
Yeah.
because what I want to tell you is that life goes on no matter what.
Mm,
So when 9/11 happened, we all felt the fear and the panic and the pain. It's just impossible not to feel it because it doesn't matter where you come from and what your life experience is. When something bad happens,
mhm,
we feel it. It affects us all.
yeah.
And with the crisis in 2000, they all felt it. So much happened in between, actually. You named the stuff that are related to America, maybe, and some of the world. I
Yeah.
name so many other things. It's not insignificant at all.
Mm,
But
yeah.
what I can tell you, if I like speak to my family, let's say it's COVID time,
Yeah.
all right? When COVID hit, I enjoyed COVID time extremely because my kids turned 16 and 18 and they
Uh-huh.
were at home. I was sleeping the night, don't have to worry about them.
Uh-huh.
So COVID felt, of course, I don't want to take it lightly. It's a horrible thing that happened to us, COVID. But on a personal level, I connected with my family, with my daughters and my husband. And when I speak to my family back in Lebanon, their experience is the same and worse. So despite that I lived with them the war, I
Yeah.
cannot relate to their economical situation
Mhm,
in
mhm.
times, in difficult times. So it's all very much significant, no matter and where it's happening in the world. It's the impact is big on everyone. Yeah.
Mm. So interesting. So people can feel because when I turn on the news, well, actually, I don't listen to the news, but when I hear about the conflict between Israel, Palestine, and Russia, Ukraine, and when you hear about the European debt crisis, I felt 2008, and we felt Lebanon and hyperinflation in Turkey and Cyprus, people losing their savings, Argentina. It's like you hear about it, but sometimes you have to actually go there to actually feel what's going on. And so interesting.
Having experienced different things in your life give you more empathy. You say, I cannot 100% walk in other people's shoes when they're suffering, but I can relate.
Mhm.
And that makes a difference why I feel it stronger. Like whenever something happening in the world, it hits me stronger
Mm.
because I know how it feels and the fear, losing their jobs, people not being able to afford bread and the necessity for their families and other stuff too. So
Yeah.
when you have known different world, your empathy is different,
Mhm.
bigger maybe, not bigger, but more impacting you personally.
Yeah. Interesting. I want to finalize this interview by talking about the power of sharing personal stories and what motivated you to start sharing your experiences through your podcast and what impact you hope to have on listeners and how can people find you and follow you and hear more about your amazing journey.
Thank you. What made me want to start my podcast is that I wanted to share my story so other will open up and share theirs. I felt for so many years my growth, my personal growth also happened from your life story, from where you came from and what challenges you overcome, but also what makes you happy and what makes you positive and doing the things you do. This is what my story started. And I started writing my stories growing up in the war, but they are the happy, sexy, funny stories. They're not dramatic. They are, but then they have a twist of some kind of, I don't know, I cannot describe it. I was a teenager growing up in the war. So I was like any other teenager. I want to date, even if it's war. Who cares? It's bombing. Yeah, but my boyfriend's waiting for me next to the church. So I have to go. So that triggers me to write the stories so people opens up more about their own stories because we think that no one wants to hear what we have.
Mm.
But if we know how to tell it, it will help us relate, learn, and grow. And my podcast grew into getting experts who have overcome difficult times and learned and want to help others to be the best of them, do the work, and become the best we can be. It's what triggers me, what made
Yeah.
me create the podcast. Yes.
Yeah, interesting. And for all the audience and listeners, I'll direct you to Rula's podcast, which will be in the show notes, and be sure to follow and like all of her social media. And really interesting conversation. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you. I would like to have a talk with you on my podcast to have your view on what's going on in your world.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd love to share my thoughts. So
Payback time.
yeah.
Nice. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here.